The president felt we had a deal. We had this MOU under which Iran was probably going to be able to get a fair amount of money out of the Strait of Hormuz, a kind of protection racket, though it might be called service fees. But they went too far. They got greedy, and they actually struck ships going through the strait that I guess hadn't paid them off. And that's not acceptable.
The US has begun further attacks on Iran. US Central Command confirmed the attacks with a statement on social media saying they were being carried out at the direction of President Trump. Earlier, the president said the ceasefire agreement with Iran is over. He was speaking at the NATO summit in Ankara.
They are behaving very badly, as they have for 47 years. And, we hit them hard last night after they launched a couple of, you don't have to know about this, you got stuff on your mind, but they launched a couple of drones and one rocket, one missile, and at ships, because they were in the strait, which they have every right to be. And so we hit them very hard last night, very, very hard. Probably hit them hard again tonight. I'll give them a little warning, we're going to hit them hard tonight.
Well, the president accused Iran of violating the Memorandum of Understanding signed on the 17th of June, which included a 60-day ceasefire to allow for negotiations and the safe passage of vessels through the Strait of Hormuz. In a series of briefings for the media at that NATO summit, the president was outspoken in his criticism of Iran's leadership.
I think it's over. I don't want to deal with them anymore. They're scum. You know what scum is? They're scum. They're sick people. They're led by sick people. And they're vicious, violent people. And if they had a nuclear weapon, they'd use it. As far as I'm concerned, it's over. I'll speak to our negotiators. They want to negotiate. They're good people. Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner. But they have to come back to me. As far as I'm concerned, it's just a waste of time dealing with them.
Well, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi responded in a post on X, Twitter, saying, "We do not answer vulgarity with vulgarity, but with action, fearlessly and with great valour." We can speak now to Elliott Abrams. He's a former US Special Representative to Iran under President Trump and a former Deputy National Security Advisor. Good evening to you, Elliott.
Hello, good to be with you.
Well, thanks so much for joining us. First, what do you make of the reports that we're getting tonight of further US attacks on Iran?
Well, they're happening, and according to CENTCOM, the targets are directly related to Iranian attacks on ships going through the Strait of Hormuz. That is, they're not related to the oil industry or economic targets. They are targets that are dealing with Iran's attacks on commercial shipping. I think that the president felt we had a deal. We had this MOU under which Iran was probably going to be able to get a fair amount of money out of the Strait of Hormuz, a kind of protection racket, though it might be called service fees. But they went too far. They got greedy, and they actually struck ships going through the strait that I guess hadn't paid them off, and that's not acceptable.
We are seeing from Iranian media reporting explosions on several cities in the country's south. Clearly, President Trump was blaming the Iranians, if you like, for starting all of this, for the provocation, for attacking shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. Do you think that's right? Do you think it is the Iranians who provoked this reaction from the United States?
Well, in this case, I think it certainly is. That is, there was a ceasefire. There was an agreement that innocent shipping could go through the strait, and the Iranians broke it and said, no, apparently you can't go through the Omani route, the southern route through the strait, and you've got to clear it with us and pay us off. That is not something that was ever agreed to. And it would mean that we and everyone else, the United Kingdom included, would be saying the Iranians control the Strait of Hormuz and we just have to pay them whatever is necessary. That wasn't the deal, and it should not be acceptable to any maritime country.
And when you hear President Trump using language like that, you describing the leadership of Iran as scum, I mean, do you think that it's really acceptable to have a US president using such language when we're supposed to be in this 60-day period of negotiations with these leaders?
No, it's not. He uses a lot of four-letter words, some a good deal worse than that. It's inappropriate. It's wrong. No previous president did it publicly. Maybe he thinks it's a good bargaining tactic. I do actually think there will be more negotiations. I don't mean now, tomorrow, this week, but I think ultimately there will be talks again. Presumably the Pakistanis and Qataris will arrange that.
So I was going to ask you about that because President Trump was saying, as we heard there, that the ceasefire is over. I mean, clearly there's not a ceasefire when there are still attacks going on. But
Right.
where do you think this leaves that memorandum of understanding, which is supposed to include a 60-day ceasefire?
Well, he said it was over, but again, that may be to some extent a bargaining position, trying to show the Iranians or say to the Iranians, you can't do this. There are going to be real repercussions if you keep attacking innocent shipping. And I thought it was interesting the way he distanced himself from his own negotiators so that if they do go back, it will be, well, the Pakistanis and the Qataris asked us, and oh, we'll try again. But Trump is not investing any of his own prestige in a future negotiation.
How great, though, do you think is the risk now that the Strait of Hormuz is effectively closed to shipping? I mean, we've heard both sides threatening to reimpose their blockades. But if you've got a situation like this where you've got 3 ships attacked by the Iranians, strikes and counterattacks going on, I mean, no ships are going to want to risk going through that waterway, are they?
Right. And today, several ships apparently turned around, ships that were heading for the Strait. I don't think we're going to go back to the kind of war that we had with strikes on all different parts of Iran and by Iran on Gulf countries, on water facilities, on oil facilities. I don't think the United States or Iran wants that. I think this kind of tit for tat strike will probably go on until there's another round of negotiation. And it does, what we can't tolerate, I think, is Iran closing the Strait of Hormuz for innocent commercial shipping, but yet having its own ships get through the strait to export oil. So if this keeps up, I do think the blockade will be reimposed.
And how great then do you think is the problem facing the US, but also the wider region, that effectively, since this war began, the Iranians have learned that all they need to do is carry out a few attacks on ships in that Strait of Hormuz. They don't need hugely complex, expensive weapons to do this, and they can effectively hold shipping and vital supplies to ransom.
They can. I mean, it's in a way, it's the insurance companies that are doing it. If you can't get insurance for a ship, and you can't, then nobody's going to go through the strait. I think the best thing we can say about this, the only hopeful thing is, it won't last forever. That is, already I've read that the Emirates, that the Saudis are thinking of ways around the strait. New pipelines, larger pipelines. The Iraqis are thinking about how they get to the Mediterranean with their oil. So the Iranians will basically be destroying their own possibility of making money out of this if they keep this up. It'll take a while, of course, to build those things. So this is not an immediate solution. It's a 2-year solution, let's say. But what can't be tolerated is for them to just attack innocent shipping in an international waterway and say, pay us.
Elliott Abrams, former special representative to Iran under President Trump. Really good to speak to you, sir. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.